Happy draft week, everybody. We are counting down the days until the NFL draft. And joining us on today's LockedOn Giants podcast is Nathan Cooper of Sports Information Solutions with his takes on the upcoming NFL draft that's coming up for you next.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. And today's Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you in part by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And I want to thank you, as always, for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen of the day, or if you are watching on YouTube, your first watch of the day. Don't forget the Locked On Giants podcast, as well as the entire Locked On Podcast Network, is available for free wherever you find your podcasts. We appreciate if you subscribe, like our channels, give us a 5-star review. We appreciate all feedback from our listeners because without you, there is no us. All right, on today's program, I have an interview with Nathan Cooper. He is an analyst over at Sports Information Solutions, which is an advanced analytical statistical service. Really good stuff. They have a really cool draft site that they put together that people can access for free. And I'm going to put links to that in the show notes. We're going to talk about different scenarios, different prospects for the Giants, all kinds of things that are draft related. So that is coming up for you next. Joining me on today's show is Nathan Cooper. He is with Sports Information Solutions. They have a brand new website, by the way, that is out and it is available for free. You can find it at nfldraft.sportsinformationsolutions.com. And I'll have that information in the show notes if you missed that. So, Nathan, thank you so much for coming on the program with me. I hope the days are treating you well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Patricia. I really appreciate you having me on. Love the draft just like everybody else. So really excited for it to be finally here.
All right. Now, Sports Information Solutions, folks, they have a bunch of different analytics that they use. They have some really good information. I've come across it, here and there in my travels. So they're also evaluating the prospects, and they have a whole scouting report and everything that you can find on that site that I just gave you. Nathan, I want to start off with the Giants draft and particularly the top prospects because, right now there's a lot of different opinions as to what the Giants may or may not do. I think we can all agree that it's going to be an offensive tackle somewhere at either 5 or 7. I want to talk about the top 3 offensive tackles. Assuming all 3 are on the board, who in your opinion of Ekwonu, Neal, and Cross is the best fit for the Giants and why?
Yeah, if you're looking at the order that we have, based on how we graded everybody out, we have Neal as the number 1 guy. He's one of our 3 blue chip prospects in terms of having a 7.0 grade and above as that blue chip Pro Bowl type of player. There's some things that, he's raw still, has some things to work on, but strong in pass pro, generates a lot of push, on down blocks at the point of attack, plays with good awareness, solid reactive athleticism as well. A lot of good stuff out of Evan Neal. So he's one of our highest graded guys. And then number 2, Charles Cross, which seems to be a guy that's being looked at by the Giants quite a bit. He's at the top of a lot of our leaderboards in terms of the tackle position. First thing that stands out a little bit, has a little bit of a narrow stance, and I think that's a little by design with the Mississippi State offense. But he's patient. He's under control. Beyond that, strong hands, accurate hands, moves well, good reactive athleticism, strong anchor in the passing game, and good leg drive in the run game as well. So a lot of good stuff going on with him, just a little bit of more of a technical aspect that needs cleaned up on his side. And then Ekwonu, another fun guy to watch, relentless, nasty finisher. Puts defenders in the dirt on nearly every play. Strong hands as well, strong anchor ability. For me personally, we have him graded at tackle. I like him a lot at tackle. But I think if he ended up having to move into guard, I think he would be an all-pro guard. I think he would do really well there. But, I think he deserves a shot at tackle for sure. And I think, many teams would ideally like to put him there, especially right away, whenever he gets in.
Is there an ideal fit, do you think, for the Giants? I mean, I know we don't really know what kind of offense they're going to run yet. I mean, we can assume that it's going to look heavily familiar to Buffalo fans and with a little bit of, Kansas City mixed in. But is one of those three guys really a good fit for the Giants, or can they just not go wrong with any of them?
To me, I don't think you can really go wrong with any of them. If you're looking for the right tackle position, maybe it's a guy like Aquanu, who maybe fits that side just a little bit better, coming out. If you're looking for left tackle, maybe to kick Andrew Thomas over, then maybe Evan Neal or Charles Cross maybe fits a little bit better. But honestly, whenever you're looking at the top of the draft, like these are, three of our highest graded guys. And they all bring a little bit something different, but they're all going to be a positive impact on this offense.
All right. Now, let's just say something funky happens on picks 1 through 4. And I don't think this will happen, but I have to ask. Let's say 2 or maybe even 3 of those tackles are gone by the time the Giants go on the clock. Obviously, I don't think there's anybody else that might be worthy of number 5 or number 7. But who are some of maybe the day 2, day 3 value picks, guys who can maybe step right in and be a starter at that right tackle spot?
Yeah, there's guys, a Trevor Penning, he's probably more of that middle of the first round guy, but if he were to drop, I think he's a guy that can come in and step in right away. You're also looking at other guys that maybe is like a Sean Ryan out of UCLA, or that Bernard Raymond out of Central Michigan, who's getting talked about a little bit. He's kind of fallen off the last, couple of months as well, but very athletic, and I think can, play that left or right side as well. And then a guy that I really like a lot, Tyler Smith out of Tulsa. I think somebody's going to probably jump on him in the late first round and just bet on the traits because he's very raw, has a lot to work on technically. But his tape is fun to watch. Talk about a guy that puts guys on the ground. He puts guys on the ground every single game, multiple times a game. It's just, the hands, some technical aspects, had 12 holding penalties this last year. So things that need to obviously get cleaned up, but I think you can plug him in at least by year 2 at the right tackle spot, and he'll be a pretty solid prospect.
All right, now we can probably say that if one of those offensive tackles are there, one of those guys is going to the Giants in the first round. But there's some debate about what they might do with the second of their first round picks. Trading down is a possibility, although the more I think about it, the less likely I think it might happen. Then there's the question of, do they go edge rusher? Do they go cornerback? Do they maybe get Kyle Hamilton, the safety, if he's sitting there, which, most mock drafts have him there? What's the best option for the Giants, assuming that they do take an offensive tackle and they have a choice of, say, a Kayvon Thibodeau, a Kyle Hamilton, a Sauce Gardner, a Derek Stingley Jr., or is there another name that maybe we're not talking about that might represent the best value while still fitting a need for the Giants there?
Yeah, I think you hit on just about everybody right there. I think, I love Thibodeau. I think he's going to be a great player. Like I have him, a notch below the Hutchinson type, but I think he's going to come out. He's, super athletic. He's going to bring a lot to both the pass and run game. So if he's there, I think that would be a great pickup. Sauce Gardner, really solid player at the corner position. Not many people are that big and move that fluidly and are that fast and are able to mirror and match a lot of receivers, especially for the next level. So I think he'll be a fun one. Stingley is an interesting guy. Obviously we have him ranked as our number 1 corner. There's a lot to like there. It's just, there's some risk, the injury, the fall off in production the last couple of years as well. But if he plays like he did in 2019 going into the 2020 season, I think there's, something there that he's going to be an all-pro type of player. But beyond that, I think there's, a few other guys they could possibly look at. If you're looking at the corner position, I like Trent McDuffie out of Washington. I think he would fit and shows a lot of good things at that position. And then there's also some other edge rushers if you're looking at that position as well. A Jermaine Johnson, a George Karlaftis, if Walker from Georgia were to fall, a few extra picks as well. A lot of good talent at those positions specifically at the top end of this draft.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up on today's Locked On Giants podcast. But first, if you are tired with dealing with low energy, poor gut health, or just having to take supplement after supplement, you need to check out AG1 by Athletic Greens. With one delicious and easy to mix scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens for less than $3 a day. Visit athleticgreens.com/NFL Network and get a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take advantage of this special offer. Now, I got to ask you about the quarterback position. The Giants not in the market to get a quarterback. They're going to write it out with Daniel Jones this year. But there is a possibility of maybe teams moving around the board to get into positions to take quarterbacks. For example, Carolina's a team that we're probably going to keep an eye on. Are they going to want a quarterback? And then is a team behind them going to want a quarterback to maybe trade up? Do you think it's worth it for the Giants, given how deep this class is, to trade down if an opportunity, blows their doors off, so to speak? I mean, or if you're the Giants, given all the needs that they have, would you just say, you know what, we're not going to get cute, we're going to stay put, we're going to get the guy we want and not risk losing him?
I think it's a tough spot. When you're at 5 and 7, you're at the top of the draft where you're going to see a lot of the best players, obviously. If you move back from 7 to the middle of the first round, then you're going to see a little bit of a fall off. But I will say, with how deep this draft is, a lot of the meat in this draft is going to be on day 2. So if you were to bump back from a 7 to, say, a 10 to 12 or 15 or something like that, if you can accumulate some more day 2 or early day 3 picks, I think you're going to be in a good spot. Because, while there is a fall off from day 1 to day 2, there's a lot of really good depth and really good prospects, on day 2. And even if you were to pull maybe a first rounder from next year as well, depending on that quarterback position, or getting another shot at possibly a quarterback next year, or another position that is going to be pretty deep, I think, definitely makes sense if the offer is right.
Okay, now I want to ask you, speaking about day 2 and day 3, that's where now you have differences of opinion. I mean, obviously there's no consensus or anything like that right now for round 1, but day 2 and day 3 get a little tricky. Who are some of the names that, maybe the fans and the media are playing up, but maybe the NFL community isn't thinking as highly of, and maybe they've got some different names that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, in terms of, I'll start with some sleepers, some guys that I think I'm a little bit higher on. One is Matthew Butler out of Tennessee, defensive tackle. I think he could come in and give some good depth to that position. Try to get a little bit more, a little deeper on the defensive line there. Guys who play hard and have a high motor. They only get you so far, but this guy has one of the highest motors that I've seen. A lot of fun to watch. Played against Alabama, extended 11-second play against Bryce Young, and was the one that basically was on the sideline forcing him to throw it away. So, he brings a lot of other stuff to the table as well. And if you're looking at, some of our stats, quick pressure rate, 5th out of 18 defensive tackles, which is really good. And then if you want to look at the safety position, there's only 2 safeties on the roster. You probably need to go out and get a safety right now. A guy that, a little bit later in the draft, I think you can get is Quentin Lake out of UCLA. Strong NFL ties, obviously, with his dad, good ball skills, strong physical tackler. And you look at the handoff ball percentage, which for us, it's basically just getting your hand on the ball, whether it's interceptions, pass defenses, anything like that. 5th out of 33 safeties on our site. So doing really well there. But if you look at the flip side, guys that are, in my opinion, a little bit overrated, guys that are, those NFL people maybe aren't talking about because, for one reason or another, we're not seeing as, eye to eye or seeing them as high. A couple guys here, Andrew Stuber from Michigan, their offensive tackle, has a little versatility to play the tackle guard position. But for me, just plays a little bit slow, lacks some balance. And I have him a little bit lower. Plus, a long-term injury risk with his ACL injury as well. Haskell Garrett, Ohio State, a guy that was at the Senior Bowl, could have been, I think is thought of pretty highly from a lot of different people. But for me, just slow off the ball, struggles to anchor against a lot of these bigger guys on the ground a little bit too much for my liking as well. You look at a total points rating per play, which is essentially like a Madden rating, 16th out of 18 defensive tackles there. And then the last guy, a safety, Veron McKinley out of Oregon. I think he's going to go way higher than I probably would take him. I think there's a lot of people that have him, much higher than I do. I'm way lower on him than a lot of people, I'm sure. The ball skills are undeniable. Really good ball skills, tracks the ball really well in the air. But for me, I just didn't see a lot else that comes out of there. And plus, as a last line of defense type of player, misses a lot of tackles for my liking. Doesn't show the consistent physicality and things in the run game. And on the back end, just a little slow to process things as well. So, obviously a guy that's going to be, pretty solid in coverage or the passing game, going to be asked a lot of. You want his processing and instincts just to be a little bit quicker.
That's a nice list. Thank you for that. I know a lot of people ask me about that, and I'm like, beauty's in the eye of the beholder for sure. I want to ask you about the tight end class, because the Giants, even though they just added another tight end yesterday, or on Thursday rather, they're going to need another young tight end. Evan Ingram, by all accounts, would have been the perfect tight end for them, but he just didn't work out here. But he had the athleticism, he had the skills, he had the size and everything, but just it didn't work out. Is there another but better version of Evan Ingram in the tight end class this year? And if not, who's maybe the closest in terms of that athleticism, somebody who can create mismatches in the second level and beyond?
Yeah, our top-rated tight end is Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina. And while we don't see the tight end class as being like a high-end type of position, our highest grade is a 6'6", which for us is that, starting level player, but only able to play the H or the Y, which is, and H is more of your athletic type of guy, your move guy, and your Y is more the inline guy. Isaiah Likely is not your Y. He's your guy that you're going to basically your Evan Ingram, 2.0 there. You're going to be able to split him out. You're going to put him in the slot. You'll be able to move him around the offense a little bit. Really good hands. And I think you could see that if you, watch the Senior Bowl, you could see that in the practices. He did really well being able to separate, runs good routes. And he catches just about everything that's put on him. So I think if you're looking for an Evan Ingram type of player, Isaiah Likely fits really well. And he's a guy that is probably going to be in that second to third round range where the Giants have a few picks to use.
What about, and I don't think the Giants are going to draft a quarterback, but you can't rule it out. But is there a good developmental quarterback that maybe they could pick up somewhere mid day three, you think?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones that a lot of people are talking about is Bailey Zapy out of Western Kentucky. Played at FCS for a few years, came to Western Kentucky, 1 year of FBS production, and blew all the stats out of the water there. Broke a lot of Joe Burrow's records. And, a lot of times, you're talking about that air raid type of offense. You look at quarterbacks like that, you're going to be talking about like, hey, he's a system quarterback. He just fits that system. If you try to bring him to the NFL, he's not going to be able to kind of fit and transfer a lot of those traits. But for him, he brings a lot of good NFL traits. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but he's smart. He uses good accuracy, maneuvers the pocket really well. The one big thing is he didn't face a lot of pressure. In that offense, you're getting the ball out really quick. So he faced the least amount of pressure, and I think in all of FBS this last year. So I think it'll be interesting whenever he gets a little bit of, pressure at the next level, if he's able to handle that. But yeah, in terms of a developmental guy, that's, I think, one of the perfect guys that you would want to get on day 3.
All right, Giant fans, we have more coming up for you today on the LockedOn Giants podcast. But first, Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, but without the calories and without the sugar. Most Built Bars contain about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. And they taste great. Built Bar offers 9 amazing flavors and nut-free variety, plus a rotating limited-time offering of different flavors that changes up every so many weeks. Head on over to BuiltBar.com and see what their current flavor lineup looks like. And use our special promo code LOCKED15 to save 15% off your first order. That's code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, for 15% off your first order at BuiltBar.com. All right, now, running back is another position that is kind of flying under the radar, but it's going to be one I think that's going to be important for the Giants. I'm thinking day 3 for running back. We don't know what's going to happen with Saquon Barkley moving forward. We don't, Matt Breida, I think, is signed for 1 year. They're going to need another running back. They have Gary Brightwell. They have Antonio Williams, but, the depth there, you want to shore that depth up. Running backs come in different shapes, sizes, flavors, if you will. Again, based on what we know about the Buffalo offense, and I know they didn't really run the ball a whole lot up there, but what's an ideal running back that we might want to keep an eye on for the Giants on day 3?
Yeah, for me, a guy that I have rated higher than probably most guys do is BJ Baylor out of Oregon State. One of the first guys that I watched during the process was fun to watch. I watched Jamar Jefferson, who was their running back last year, ended up getting drafted, played a little bit for the Lions, and I think they're pretty high on him. And I actually have Baylor better than him. Very slippery runner, can get vertical quickly, good vision to find the open holes in the offense. The big thing for me, Oregon State just doesn't feature their backs in the passing game very much. So he would have to develop a little bit more as a receiver in passing, in pass pro as well. But I think he has the skills to be able to do that. And I think his running style is definitely, one that fits the offense. And I think he's perfect to put in behind some of those guys that, a Barkley or a Breida. And, if those guys end up leaving in a year or two, I think he's a guy that can step in and be able to fill in as starting running back.
Running backs, they have such a short shelf life. And Joe Shane, when he was with Buffalo, and Brandon Beane, I don't think they ever drafted a running back before the 3rd round, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the soonest they went. And I think it was Devin Singletary, if I'm not mistaken. So not a high premium placed on running backs,
Correct.
So,
and there's so many of them too. There's
yeah.
no reason to take one super high when there's a lot of them in that, day 3 range.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Now I want to ask you about defensive backs because, in a Wink Martindale defensive system, we just, a spoiler alert, we on Wednesday had an opportunity to watch a little bit of the practice, the voluntary minicamp that they ran. And I was watching some of the defensive fronts and some of the things they were doing to, quote unquote, create pressure, which led me to think that maybe, if they get a great, a stud defensive end, great. But I kind of came away with the impression that maybe a defensive back is going to be a better fit, maybe somebody at safety. Now, if they don't get a Kyle Hamilton, if they can't get a Sauce Gardner or a Derek Stingley Jr., who are some of the value picks on day 2 and day 3 that might be able to step in and give them, that coverage that they need, especially keeping in mind that they may move on from James Bradbury, which would create a whole different issue for them?
Yeah, for sure. One guy at safety that I'm really high on, Kirby Joseph out of Illinois. I think there's some talk that, maybe that the back end of the 1st round, he's probably looking more like, round 3 right now, which I think is a perfect spot. Very rangy on the back end, good ball skills. So he's one of those guys that whether you're in a 2-high system or a single high, he can play both of those and be able to range back there and, do really well against the pass. You look at our total points rating per cover snap, 1st out of all safeties on our site right now. So definitely good production out of a guy like that. And then if you look at the corner position, like you said, if Bradbury moves on, a guy like Cam Taylor-Britt out of Nebraska, I think fits really well in that 3rd, 4th round range as well. Very tough, very physical, versatile type of player, can play on the outside, can move him into the slot, can even move him back to the safety position as well. So he's a guy that, he's going to play physical at the line. He's going to play physical through the route, plays good in man coverage. He was 3rd out of all 43 corners in yards per snap against man coverage. So one of those guys who's really going to lock down, a receiver for the offense. And those are a couple of guys that I think, you get to that 3rd round range, guys that, we would have rated higher than the 3rd round, but, those guys are probably going to fall a little bit there. And I think make a lot of sense and bring really good value for that spot.
All right. Now I'm going to give you a tough one here. Of all the value picks, like on day 2, day 3, is there one in particular that if the Giants don't draft, that maybe Giant fans should throw their remotes at the TV?
That is a tough one, just because there's so much depth in this class that, if you don't get this guy, there's 3 or 4 other guys that I think make a lot of sense and fit as well across all positions. We talked about a little bit, edge, corner. Those are some of the deeper positions in this class. And I think, if you don't come away with an edge or a corner, whether it's, at the 5th or 7th pick or on day 2, then I think I would be a little upset if I'm a Giants fan, because, those are the positions that, a lot of people are saying, go in and get 2 of them at some point during the draft. So I think if you're not taking one, like I said, on day 2, where there's going to be a lot of really good talent, then I think I would be a little upset if I was a Giants fan.
I know I would be upset if the Giants didn't get at least 2 offensive linemen in this draft, a starter in round 1, and then maybe a developmental prospect on day 2 or day 3, because right now the Giants, their cupboard is bare, and shame on them for letting that happen, because offensive linemen can take up to a year to really get, to develop them so that they can step in. All right, I'm going to ask you one more question, then I'll let you go. Excuse me. What's the one scenario that you can see kind of upsetting the apple cart at the top of the draft? I mean, just something that we're maybe not expecting, or, maybe you've heard something that the Lions are going to do something weird, or maybe the Jaguars are going to do something weird. What's something that you think could potentially just upset the whole mock draft scenario or expectations that people seem to have at the top of the first round?
I think it's going to be the quarterback. If the Lions were to come out and take Malik Willis at 2, I think things are going to get a little crazy, because then you may have some teams try to get up, because now you have, especially if Hutchinson goes 1, and then you have guys like a Thibodeau, and you have Walker, and then you have still all 3 of these tackles. I think a lot of teams are going to be very happy that one of those quarterbacks is going to go. Like you mentioned earlier, if all of these quarterbacks are starting to go early on, that's just going to help every team behind them, get some of these guys falling to them. But I will say I'm a Lions fan, so I don't want them to take Malik Willis. And I would rather take that edge rusher, whether it is a Hutchinson that falls or a Thibodeau or someone like that. But if those quarterbacks start to go a little bit earlier than everyone thinks, I think chaos can ensue a little bit. And I think a lot of teams are going to be really happy that some of these other players are falling to them.
I'd sign up for that. I know if I were the Giants, I would definitely take that. Those quarterbacks start going, in that range of 1 to 4. All right, Nathan, great stuff. Before we say goodbye, tell everybody a little bit more about Sports Info Solutions, or anything that, you guys want to feature.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned before, our new website, nfldraft.sportsinfosolutions.com, completely free for anybody that's known about the SIS Football Rookie Handbook the last few years. It's basically that. Now it's in an online version. Over 400 scouting reports and players, by far the most we've ever done. We have our first ever big board, which features the top 101 players, positional rankings, tons of leaderboards, every NFL team page with tons of stats, and an interactive depth chart sonar tool as well. So you can kind of see the positions, that you're set with, and some positions that maybe you have need, that we definitely talked about today for the Giants. So definitely a lot of info there. So definitely go check that out. We're also hiring for our football position next year, for our football video scout position. So you can go to sportsinfosolutions.com to check that out as well for an application. And then, like you said, on Twitter, I'm NCoop Draft, and our company Twitter is sportsinfo_SIS.
All right, Giant fans, that's going to do it for us today on the Locked On Giants podcast. I hope you enjoyed that interview. For the rest of the week, let me just get you filled in on what we've got coming up. We're not going to do a Twitter Tuesday this week. With the draft coming up, we'll probably do a mailbag at some point later on in the week. But what we are going to do tomorrow, we'll have Ed Valentine of Big Blue View on. I am hoping to have the Entertainer on for a live show, probably Wednesday. We're going to look for either Wednesday or Thursday. Anyway, Thursday, we'll do a last-minute draft preview type of show, and getting you caught up on any rumors. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're coming at you with all new shows as we track the New York Giants draft. It's going to be a busy week. We're going to bring you everything you need to know here on the Locked On Giants podcast. Make sure you keep it here, and we will catch you tomorrow.